In Aachen Cathedral in modern-day Germany lies a treasury filled with objects that show the immense artistic craftsmanship of the High Middle Ages. The central object in this reliquary is a silver-gilded bust crafted in about 1350 and made in the likeness of the man who is often credited with starting the process by which all of this was made possible. That man is Charlemagne, the Frankish ruler who lived some 500 years before the bust was created, a man who has, over time, been made great and who posterity has remembered as one of the finest rulers of the post-Roman West. In fact, it has been said that he invented medieval rulership. Ruling in the late 8th and early 9th centuries, he established a large empire, uniting most of Western and Central Europe. His reign had lasting political and societal implications that would stand as a model for kings throughout the next 1,000 years. His legacy is so strong that he has been dubbed the Father of Europe. He was born on the 2nd of April 748 to the Frankish nobleman Pepin the Short, who was just about to seize power from the Merovingian line of kings. A new Carolingian dynasty was established in 755 when Pope Stephen II announced Pepin and the 12-year-old Charles and his brother Charlemagne as kings, giving them the title Patrician of the Romans. On the 24th of September 768, Pepin died, leaving the throne to his sons, who ruled as joint kings. Charles inherited the outer parts of the kingdom, which bordered the sea, namely Neustria, Western Aquitaine and northern parts of Austrasia, while his brother took the rest. His brother Charlemagne lived only for another 3 years, and in 771 Charles inherited all of his lands. This gave him complete power over the kingdom, and he set about expanding it. His first solo military victory after the death of his brother would come against the Saxons. He plundered their gold and silver, and this helped him gain authority with the people who lived there. Over the next 30 years, he would continually face off against Saxon armies, the most memorable of which being the 782 massacre of Verdun, which saw Charlemagne order the deaths of over 4,500 Saxons, painting him in a different light. This shows how callous and ruthless he was as a ruler, and of course through modern eyes it appears an atrocious act. By the 18th century, great thinkers such as Voltaire saw Charlemagne as despotic and murderous, so much so that over the past few centuries, certain historians have attempted to exonerate Charlemagne from the massacre by claiming the details false and the number of dead exaggerated. However, the facts remain. He spent much of his first decade as sole ruler taking land by force in Saxony, Bavaria and the Lombard region. He then went down into Spain, spreading Christianity throughout the lands he defeated. It was his strong relationship with the church that gave him even more power and authority. His relationship with Rome continued in 774 when he was welcomed into the ancient city by Pope Adrian. They swore oaths to each other over the relics of St. Peter, and Pope Adrian presented Charlemagne with the deeds that had been agreed in 755 between his father and Pope Stephen. From here, he would forge a strong relationship with the church. By 799, a new pope had been appointed, but faced political opposition. Fearing for his life after an assassination attempt, Pope Leo sought Charlemagne's help. Charlemagne sent Leo back to Rome with military backing, and he was reinstated as pope. Biographer Einhard tells us that had he known what Pope Leo had planned, Charlemagne would never have set foot in Rome the following Christmas. This seems hard to believe, and it would seem Einhard was merely trying to show the humility of his king. Despite this, Pope Leo repaid the favour by crowning Charlemagne Emperor of Rome on Christmas Day 800 AD. This was the first time an emperor had been crowned since the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476. Charlemagne was to rule over a Holy Roman Empire in the West. It has been suggested that his taking of the title of emperor was in part an attempt to incorporate the Saxons into the Frankish Empire, as well as to gain more authority in Lombardy and the whole of what is now Italy. There were powerful noblemen in this area, and Charlemagne needed their backing to rule successfully. After leaving Rome in 801, he would never again visit the city. The years after his coronation were spent ruling his new empire from his royal palace at Aachen in modern Germany. He also had a focus on the Eastern Holy Roman Empire and sent delegations to Constantinople in the hope that he would be recognized there as Emperor of the West. For many years, the Byzantine Emperor Nikephoros I refused to recognize Charlemagne's rule. But after his death, his successor Michael I formally recognized Charlemagne as emperor, and peace ensued. This is key to understanding the significance of Charlemagne in the historical context. His relationship with the Byzantine Empire re-established contact between the ancient Mediterranean world and the Western Atlantic world. The re-established relationship with the Mediterranean world would give Charlemagne the means to continue the cultural revolution started under his predecessors Pepin and Charles Martel. Einhard tells us that Charlemagne spoke fluent Latin and could understand Greek, as well as being bilingual in his native Germanic and Romance dialects. It comes as no surprise then that he valued education as a paramount to his citizens. He issued several decrees in an attempt to achieve his aim. One decree stated, "In every bishop's see, instruction shall be given in the psalms, musical notation, chant, the computation of years and seasons, and grammar." Now, this is hardly advanced mathematics, but it was a start. Students would come from the households of the elite or those thought to have a future in the clergy. They would learn basic Latin literacy and grammar, arithmetic, and other subjects of the medieval liberal arts. The hope was that these students would grow to become priests who could teach basic levels of literacy to the parishioners, enough to give them a grasp of the scriptures. To help with this new venture, he enlisted learned men from far and wide, the principal of which was the learned teacher Alcuin of York. Alcuin had grown up under the tutelage of the Archbishop Egbert at York. The school at York was a renowned centre for learning in literature, science, and the liberal arts. In essence, the school he would develop at the Carolingian court was his attempt at replicating York. After he had graduated from the school, he became a teacher, but we must consider teaching at this time in the context of the medieval world. This was teaching with major religious overtones. Whole lives were dedicated to the church. Alcuin, as far as can be ascertained, did not take monastic vows, therefore was never a priest. He did, however, hold the title of deacon, whose job it was to assist the priest in church matters. In 781, Alcuin was sent to Rome by the Northumbrian king Elfwald to convince the Pope to officially recognise York as an archbishopric. On his journey home, he would stop in the Italian city of Parma, and there meet Charlemagne. The two men must have had lengthy discussions, and soon after, Charlemagne had convinced Alcuin to make the move to Aachen to form the Carolingian school. Einhard considered Alcuin to be the most learned man anywhere to be found, and it would seem likely he was key to Charlemagne's vision. Not only could he teach, but he brought with him knowledge of books, and books could change the medieval world, and indeed they would. Alcuin collected books from the classical authors, and at the Carolingian court they were copied and reproduced so that the knowledge held within their pages could be disseminated. Almost all of our knowledge of ancient literature stems from this process. A beautiful byproduct of this copying was that by doing so, the monks who were reproducing the works happened upon a new type of script. They called it Carolingian. The lettering has been considered some of the most beautiful ever created, and we can see an example here. It went out of fashion over the next few centuries until the humanists of the Renaissance revived it, due to its clarity and elegance over the scrawling Gothic. After a life spent in the pursuit of expansion, cultural revolution, and always striving for more, in 813, Charlemagne was forced to slow down. During the autumn, he became ill. He spent his last months studying the Gospels, praying and fasting. It is said that he contracted pleurisy and spent his last days bedridden before dying on the 28th of January, 814. He was buried in the chapel at Aachen the same day, As soon as he had become ill in the previous September, he had crowned his only surviving son Louis as co-emperor and his successor. He most probably hoped the somewhat peaceful empire he had ruled over would continue to grow after his death. But alas, his son Louis's reign was fraught with troubles and civil strife, and soon after Louis's death, the kingdom fell apart. However, the political structures Charlemagne implicated remained in place until the 11th century. In the long centuries after his death, Charlemagne eventually took on legendary status. Helped by the biographies written of him by Einhard and Notke, he became a figure seen as a crusader and Christian warrior in the late Middle Ages. In France, he became an exemplar of the Christian king and one of the 9 worthies. He features in the medieval literary cycles known as the Matter of France, and in all, over 1,000 legends were recorded about him, more than any other ruler of the period. His legacy lives on to this day. The city of Aachen has, since 1949, awarded annually an international prize for the promotion of European unity. The award is named the Charlemagne Award. In the end, he will be remembered as a medieval king who ruled from Denmark to the Adriatic, who conquered lands, and who, through his cultural revolution, gives light to what is commonly referred to as the Dark Ages.